All right, we're recording to the cloud, everyone. All right, we're live on Facebook right now. Shalom. I'm Brother Doug. I'm with my brother Dennis today. We are from the Awakened by Yahuwah Fellowship Group in Yahuwah Almighty and Yahusha Messiah. We are going to be doing a study today about the differences in the Septuagint and Masoretic text of the book of Yahusha, also known as the book of Joshua in your modern Bibles. Okay, this is going to be called the Adonai Deception, Part 6. All right, so I would definitely recommend those that don't know much about the Septuagint, definitely tune into this study. If you're not tuning in, definitely get tuned in here. Okay, so I want to show you guys what I mean by this, the Adonai Deception. I'm just going to read a little bit here. Okay, Phoenicia.org I'm going to be going to right now. And I'm giving you a couple of resources here to show you. I'm not making this stuff up. Phoenicia.org. Adonis. All right. Adonis, the master of the Hebrews, they call it. Okay. Or Lord of the Hebrews. Okay. Says here, Adonis, a fertility, mighty one, comely youth, beloved by Astarte. Wonder who this is referring to. Okay, represents death and rebirth in Oriental vegetation cult. He is also known as the agricultural divinity named Eshmun. Adonis is derived from the Canaanite title Adon. Okay, it is the Semitic word for master or lord. It means my, therefore Adonai. Adonis is the Hellenized version of the same, translated as my Lord. Similarly, the meaning of Baal, with whom he shares traits. Very important to understand there. So this Adonis Adonai guy is pretty much Baal. It's pretty much the Adonai would be the Semitic version of Baal, and Adonis is the Greek version of Baal. Okay, according to this article here. And even if we go to etymology, right, online.com, let's go to some other sources here, right? Adonis. Okay. Look what it says here. Okay. See here. Adonis, right? Beautiful young man from Greek. Adonis, name of the youth beloved by Aphrodite, from the Phoenician Adon, lord, probably originally ruler, from base Adon, to judge, rule. Adonai is the Hebrew cognate, basically meaning Adonai is the Hebrew version of Adonis. Okay, so again, I'm not skewing anything here, guys. I'm using multiple sources here. Okay, and we're going to see here how Adonai, this word Adonai, was used as by the Hebrew sages of the Masoretic text, especially to hide Yahuwah's name. So we're going to see this here. Okay, first verse we got to go to, and I'm pretty sure you can find Encyclopedia Britannica after we go through all these scriptures. I can show you guys a third witness of the truth where Adonai comes from, in my opinion, according to historical sources. And so anyway, so Joshua chapter 3, verse 11. All right, so that is why our fellowship does not use Adonai to refer to Yahuwah. So anyway, let's go to Joshua chapter 3, verse 11. All right, so behold the ark of the covenant of Yahuwah. Notice how in the Septuagint, the English word Lord is all caps. Okay? In the Apostolic Bible Polyglot, all caps here. Right? Okay? Now, if you go to Sefer, behold the ark of the covenant of Adonai. Right? So I'm not skewing anything. I'm not pushing out an agenda here. I'm using two different versions of the text here. Clearly, the Septuagint, especially with the all caps English of Lord, it's showing that that's where the Tetragrammaton is supposed to be. So in the original Paleo, I believe it would have been read as, "Behold, the ark of the covenant of Yahuwah of all the earth passes over Jordan." Okay. All right. So now we're going to go to... All right, we're going to have to go to Joshua chapter 3, verse 13. So we're going to go stay in this same chapter here. "And it shall come to pass when the feet of the priests that bear the ark of the covenant of Yahuwah," and again, I'm going to go to, for some reason, I apologize, guys, my parallel today is not working correctly. My parallel for eSword is not working correctly. I don't know whatever happened to it, but anyway. So, I'm going to have to show you screen by screen the differences here. Okay. All right. "And it shall be as whenever the feet shall rest of the priests of the ones lifting the ark of the covenant of Yahuwah," according to the Apostolic Bible Polyglot here, it has all caps Lord here. Okay. So that should be Yahuwah, right? "Of all the earth in the water of the water of the Jordan shall fail, and the water going down shall stand from above as the heat." So anyway, so we see here it should be Yahuwah again, but what happens in the Masoretic? Oh, okay, so the Masoretic actually has it there. But you know what they do? They add a little Adonai there. What's going on here? Okay, and I know people are going to say, well, you know, who's to say that that shouldn't be there in the verse? The point of the matter is the Septuagint, the original Septuagint, goes back to 285 BC. So we can say, with pretty much using common sense here, the Masoretes actually added an extra word to this verse. It should not say Yahuwah, master of all the earth. It should actually say Yahuwah of all the earth, if that makes any sense. What the Masoretes actually did here was they took, they actually added to his word, is what they did. And they put Adon there after the H3068. And even in the Sefer, it says, "Bear the ark of Yahuwah," which is correct. Yahuwah should be there, the H3068. But then they put the Adonai of all the earth. So again, Adonai is being added to the text where it should not be there. There's only one kurios. And it's easy to show this because there's only one kurios in the Greek. If there's a word meaning master that should have followed the Tetragrammaton, when the Septuagint was made, they should have actually had, at least there should have been two kurioses. There should have been two G2962s, not one. So to me, that is very, very, very iffy. So anyway, we're continuing here, and Sister Alyssa has just joined us. So now we are continuing with this study here. We are going to be going to the next one. So I hope you guys are seeing the connection here. All these Adonais being added by the Masoretes, okay? All right, now we're going to go to the Septuagint. The Septuagint in chapter 5 of the book of Joshua, verse 14. And let's see here, chapter 5, verse 14. We are going to do... All right, so here. And I'm using the Apostolic Bible Polyglot, which keyed to the Strong's Concordance. So you can actually look in the original Greek too. All right, so here we go. All right. "And he said to him that I am the commander-in-chief of the army of," notice how it's all caps here, "Yahuwah. Now I have come." And Yahusha fell upon his face upon the ground, and he did obeisance, meaning he reverenced the commander of Yahuwah's army, which I believe is Yahusha in the form of the angel of Yahuwah. My master, what do you assign to your servant? Oh, wow. So the Greek actually has a word for master. I was just talking to Bobby and Kristen earlier on this Shabbat. Does the Greek actually have a legitimate word that just means master? Okay, it does. G1203. I might have to write that down. Okay. So there's an actual word that just means master that's separate from the holding place for the tetragrammaton. Okay, cool. All right. So now if we go to the Masoretic or just the Sefer here that uses the Masoretic, the problem here is, oh no, actually, the only difference here, it says nay. So the Masoretic text has you believe the commander of Yahuwah's army is not on Joshua's side. How does that make any sense? So Yahusha's not on Joshua's side. So they make you think that this commander of the angelic army would be against Israel. That makes no sense at all. So the fact that the Septuagint does not have nay there actually makes more sense in context with this chapter here, specifically in Joshua chapter 5, since the nay is not found in the Greek there, but it's found in the Masoretic. Okay, so now we are going to go to Joshua. I think this is supposed to be verse 15. I think I have a little typo here, chapter 5, verse 15. We're gonna be finding a couple more Adonais here pretty soon. Okay, let's see here. And okay, so let me just use the Bren's a little bit easier to read here. And Yahusha fell on his face upon the earth and said to him, Yahuwah, or Master, what do you command your servant? Okay, so Master, what do you command your servant? And the commander of chief of the army of Yahuwah said to Yahusha, untie your sandal from your feet, for the place which you stand upon it is set apart. And Yahusha did thus. Okay, so the ABP Plus is trying to fix the verse numbers to make it match with the Masoretic. I see what's going on here. So it's actually verse 16. So the captain of Yahuwah's army said to Yahusha, loose your shoe off your foot, for the place where you stand is set apart. So basically the same thing the angel of Yahuwah in the burning bush said to Moses in Exodus. What is it, Mom? Exodus
I don't know the exact
3, right?
Yeah,
Exodus 3.
The exact same thing.
It's almost the exact same phrase, literally. So we know who this commander is, okay? It's pretty obvious. The angel of Yahuwah, okay?
Yeah.
So, all right, so, and let's go back here. We're going to go back to verse 16 in chapter 5 here. So now if we go to the Masoretic, you're going to see again, instead of the all caps Lord, which we know to be Yahuwah, that's basically a substitution for the YHWH. You're going to see in the Masoretic of the Sefer, okay. All right, here we go. Oh, okay. No, it is. All right, so let's see here. Maybe I was wrong there. Okay, so nay, but as the captain, let me see here. Sometimes they do fix it. Okay, let me just see here. Hold on a second, guys. All right. Let's see here. Oh, here we go. Okay, so Joshua 5:14. At the end of 5:14, it says, my master. Okay, so yeah, there's the Adonai there in verse 14. Let's see what the Greek has in verse 5:14 or 5:15. Oh, yeah. And said to him, Master, what do you command your servant? So, yeah, so my master, again, this is the Greek word despotes, which is kind of interesting. So we got the G123 despotes, which is separate from kurios, which is the substitution in the Greek for Yahuwah. So that's very interesting. So Adonai is being used in the Masoretic there again, which is very weird. Again, that they wouldn't have a specific Hebrew word that just means master when the Greek does. That we just found out here. So now we're going to go to chapter 7, verse 7 here of the book of Joshua. So we're going to go to chapter 7, verse 7. And chapter 7. Here we go. Okay, so now we're going to go here. And Yahusha said, I pray, Yahuwah, therefore, has your servant brought these people over the Jordan to deliver them to the Amorite to destroy us? Would we had remained and settled ourselves beyond Jordan? Okay, so you have the caps here, all caps, Yahuwah here, right? All right. Okay, so all caps Yahuwah in Joshua 7:7. Now let's go to the Masoretic here. Let's see here. Where's the Sefer? And Yahusha said, Alas, O Adonai. So here we go. We got the Adonai here. And how do I know for a fact Adonai wasn't there with the H3068 Yahuwah in the original? Because if we look at the Septuagint here, and even if we just go to the Greek OT plus, which just has the Greek with Strong's numbers, there's only one G2962 in this verse. So literally, there is no word that you could get that would have master in front of the Tetragrammaton. So basically, what the Masoretes did was they literally put Adonai, they added a word Adonai into the text. So anyway, and obviously all of us that know Torah, we know not to add or take away from the Father's word. Okay, so adding a word there that is not necessary is definitely something against his word, okay, to do. All right. Joshua chapter 7, verse 8. So now we're going to go to verse 8 here. All right, so and what shall I say since Yasharel has turned his back before his enemy? So now we're going to go to the Masoretic here. So what's weird is they add a Adonai here, where the Septuagint doesn't even really mention anything in the verse, whether master or Yahuwah. The Masoretic here puts in H136 Adonai. But if you go into the Septuagint, it just says, and what shall I say when Yasharel turned back, the back of the neck before its enemy? So obviously we know Yahuwah is the one talking here. There's no reason to add him in. But even worse is that the Masoretic didn't at least add in his name. They added in Adonai. So they make people think that Adonai is his name by doing that. In context, what they're doing is they're putting this word Adonai as a name is what they're doing. Okay, so all right. Joshua chapter 9, verse 3. Now, this is really weird. This is going to be a very weird difference here. Joshua chapter 9, verse 3. Masoretic text has Joshua, Septuagint has Yahuwah. And we're going to see which one makes more sense in the context of that particular verse. So let's see here. The inhabitants of Gibeon. So this is talking about the Gibeonites and all that in context. Joshua chapter 9, verse 3. The inhabitants of Gibeon heard all that Yahuwah did to Ai. Notice how it says all that Yahuwah did. So now if you go to, and of course, unfortunately, the ABP plus here is siding with the Masoretic, which makes no logical sense. So let's go to the Greek OT plus here. Yeah. G2962, all that Yahuwah did. Okay. Now, if you go to the Masoretic of the Sefer, it says, and the inhabitants of Gibeon heard what Yahusha had done unto Jericho and Ai. So they give all the credit to the son of Nun in the Masoretic. You see the difference there? The Septuagint gives the credit, even though Yahusha physically was fighting. The author of the Septuagint, the authors, I should say, the 72 translators, actually understood that Yahuwah was the power. He was the one that gave Yahusha the ability to defeat Ai, if that makes any sense. Okay. So according to the overall character of Yahuwah spoken out in the scriptures, Yahuwah always says, don't think that your own strength got you this battle. And we see that the Masoretes are making that mistake. They're giving all the credit to Joshua instead of Yahuwah. So obviously we can go with the Masoretic in chapter 9, verse 3. So anyway. All right. Now here's one of the biggest differences here. Actually, you know what? Since this is the last chapter, we'll go to chapter 24 last. So let's backtrack here. Let's go to chapter 16, verse 10. This is a huge difference. Wow. And this is like a whole paragraph the Masoretic is lacking here. So let's see here. Chapter 16, verse 10. And we're going to read first from the Septuagint here. The Brenton's English Septuagint says, and Ephraim did not destroy the Canaanite who dwelt in Gazer. And the Canaanite dwelt in Ephraim until this day, until Pharaoh, the king of Egypt, went up and took it and burnt it with fire. And the Canaanites and the Perizzites and the dwellers in Gaza, they destroyed. And Pharaoh gave them for a dowry to his daughter. Now, what's missing here in the Masoretic is the mentioning that this Pharaoh of Egypt at the time, I guess what would that be? The time of, they're already practically going into the promised land, right? So this is way after that Pharaoh of the Exodus. This is another Pharaoh after the Pharaoh of the Exodus. So it seems like this Pharaoh Yahuwah is using to do his bidding to actually finish what his own people couldn't do, which I find interesting that the Masoretic, of course, would leave out. Anything that portrays us in a bad light, anything that shows that our ancestors, weren't always righteous. So that whole paragraph there talking about the Pharaoh, king of Egypt, finishing off those tribes of giants, completely missing from the Masoretic. So again, it mentions the Pharaoh, king of Egypt, literally burning with fire the Canaanites and the Perizzites and the dwellers in Gaza. Very interesting. Very interesting, to say the least. Okay, moving on here. We're going to go to chapter 17 of Joshua, verse 4. This is where I would actually side. Obviously, today we don't have the original manuscripts of either one. So there are certain times where I go with the Masoretic text because sometimes they actually show where the father's name is supposed to be. The Greek Septuagint has Theos. So this is like one of the, minor cases. I would say go with the Masoretic. Okay, so here we go. Joshua 17, verse 4. Okay, so 17, verse 4. So, all right, 17, verse 4. And they stood before Eleazar the priest and before Yahusha and before the rulers, saying, Alua gave a charge by hand of Masha to give us an inheritance in the midst of our brothers. So there was given to them by the command of Yahuwah. So at least Yahuwah is there at the end there. An inheritance among the brothers of their father. Okay, now if we go to the Masoretic, it'll probably have Yahuwah twice, if I'm not mistaken. Okay, so we'll say, and they came near before Eleazar the priest and before Yahusha the son of Nun and before the princes, saying, Yahuwah commanded Whoops. Okay. Why did it do that? I hate it when it does that. It glitches. All right, hold on. Yahuwah commanded Masha to give us an inheritance among our brothers. Therefore, according to the commandment of Yahuwah, he gave them an inheritance among the brothers of their father. So the first Yahuwah in the Masoretic is Alur Elohim, Theos in the Septuagint. So in that case, I go with the Septuagint. But that's a minor negative, really, when we look at all these Adonais that previously we've seen with the Masoretic here. So right now, there's a lot more negatives for the Masoretic so far. Okay, so all right. So now we're going to go to verse 5. Masoretic text lacks land of Labed, which is kind of interesting. That seems to be a very important thing to be missing there. So it just says in the Masoretic here, the Sefer, and there fell 10 portions to Manasseh beside the land of Gilead and Bashan, which were on the other side of the Jordan. Now, if you go to the Septuagint, it doesn't just say that. It says, and their lot fell to them from Manasseh and to the plain of Labek of the land of Jordan, of the land of Gilead, which is beyond Jordan. So it lets you know the exact plain that it's at. What the name of the plain is, the plain of Labak, or the Eretz of Labak. Okay. So to me, that's a very important thing that they actually left out there. So, yeah. So let's go here to chapter 17, verse 6. LXX says sons of Manasseh. Masoretic text says daughters. Now, this is really weird. This is a really weird difference here. You're talking about two different sexes here. Very, very weird. Okay. So let's see here. It says, for the daughters of the sons of Manasseh, Septuagint, sons of Manasseh, inherited a portion in the midst of their brothers, which actually makes sense with the commandment that this, in context, is referring to when they ask Masha to ask Yahuwah, what is going to happen if our father had no sons? Who's going to get the land? So if you know the commandment in the Torah, this is why this commandment's being given and why this allotments being given. And the land of Gilead was assigned to the remainder of the sons of Manasseh, right? So now, so let's see here, because the daughters of Manasseh, it mentions nothing about the sons of Manasseh. It just says the daughters of Manasseh had an inheritance. Very weird there. So this gives you more of a distinction in the Septuagint of their lineage, that they're the daughters of the sons of Manasseh. See, the Masoretic would have you believe they're direct daughters of Manasseh. So that's like a whole genealogical problem. That's like, is what I'm seeing there. I could be wrong, but it seems like there's a whole genealogical problem, error with the Masoretic there. So, all right. All right. And what's also interesting, too, is the Masoretic text is missing in the midst of their brothers. Very interesting. Okay, so that's a negative for the Masoretic in verse 6. Now to verse 11 of the same chapter. The Masoretic text lacks the phrase Endor. Very weird. So we're going to go to Joshua chapter 17, verse 11. And Manasseh shall have in the portion of Issachar and Asher Bethshan and their villages and inhabitants of Dor and its villages and inhabitants of Megiddo and its villages and a third part of Maphetah and its villages.
Mine says Endor.
Yeah. Okay, so let's just see here. All right. Am I reading the right verse here? What is verse 11, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so maybe it's the Septuagint's missing Endor. Where do you see Endor? Which verse are you at?
Okay, in 11 it says, within Issachar and Asher, Manasseh also had Beth Shan
Oh, okay, I
Them
see
and
it.
the people of Dor, Endor,
Okay.
Tanakh, and Megiddo.
All right, so it seems like I might have mistyped here. I think actually the Septuagint is missing Endor.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so that's actually a point for the Masoretic there, that the Septuagint is missing Endor. So I actually have to fix that. So the LXX lacks Endor. Very interesting. I don't know. That seems to be a point off for our modern version of the Septuagint, the Codex Vaticanus, Latin version of the Septuagint. So I would have to go definitely with the Masoretic in verse 11 there. Now, verse 14, again, we have the Septuagint same Alu or Alahim. The Masoretic actually has the YHUH, the YHWH there. So I would definitely go with the Masoretic here also in verse 14. And the sons of Joseph answered Yahusha, saying, Wherefore have you caused us to inherit one inheritance and one line, whereas I am a great people, and Alua has baruched me. So that's how the Septuagint reads it. Now, if we go to the Sefer, it says, of the Masoretic text, it says, And the children of Joseph spoke unto Yahusha, saying, Why have you given me but one lot and one portion to inherit, seeing I am a great people? For as much as Yahuwah has baruched me hereto. So the Yahuwah in the Hebrew there is in the Masoretic text instead of the theos of the Greek, which is basically the Greek equivalent to Elohim or Alua. So, yeah, I would definitely go with the Masoretic in verse 14, just to reiterate there. Seems to be translated better. Okay, Joshua 17:18. LXX lacks, but the mountain shall be yours. So that's kind of interesting. The Septuagint is lacking in verse 18. Pretty interesting part of the verse there. But the mountain shall be yours, for it is wood, and you shall cut it down, and the outgoings of it shall be yours, for you shall drive out the Canaanite. I guess that's referring to the Canaanites, though they have iron chariots and they are strong. So the Septuagint would just read as, For you shall have the wood, for there is wood. Okay. So yeah, the mountain shall be yours is the only thing that's missing. So the mountain should be yours is a very important part of the verse, I would think, though. So yeah, I'm going with the Masoretic on that one. So now we're going to go to verse 15. This is very weird too. The LXX is actually missing the in the land of the parasites and in the land of the giants. So I'm just going to turn off my phone here. I don't want no interruptions here going on the recording here. So here we go. All right. So now we're going to go to the eastward here. I'm going to show you guys the difference here. So the Septuagint's actually lacking a phrase here talking about the land of the giants, which is really weird. And Yahusha said to them, If you be a great people, go up to the forest and clear the land for yourself, if Mount Ephraim be too little for you. If you go to the Masoretic, it says, Cut down for yourself there in the land of the Perizzites and Rephaim, if Mount Ephraim be too narrow for you. So very interesting. Again, we have to take into consideration what we have today is not the original of the Septuagint. It is the Codex Vaticanus. The Vatican could be monkeying with stuff. I would not be surprised. So we just got to keep in mind that we don't have an original of anything as far as manuscripts go. So Joshua 18:4, Masoretic text lacks. Now the Masoretic text lacking something, as it will be proper to divide it. Now that's a point against the Masoretic there. So that's a positive for the Septuagint here. So the Masoretic in verse 4 is actually lacking. Okay. And let them describe it before me, as it will be proper to divide. So let them describe it before me is not mentioned in the Masoretic at all. So that's very interesting there. All right, so now we're going to move on here. Verse 9 of chapter 18. Okay. The LXX lacks to the army at Shiloh. So again, now we're going to a point against the Septuagint here. Let's see here. So let's see here. Yeah. So this phrase here, the army at Shiloh, is not mentioned in the Septuagint. Okay, so moving on there. That's a point for the Masoretic text there. All right, here's another negative for the Codex Vaticanus modern version of the Septuagint here. Joshua 18:10, LXX lacks, and there Joshua divided the land unto the children of Yasharel according to their divisions. Now, depending on the context, maybe that wasn't originally there, but we're going to see really quick if it would make sense for that phrase not to be needed. And Yahusha cast lot for them in Shiloh before Yahuwah. That's how the Septuagint would read. In the Masoretic, it would say, and Yahusha cast lots for them in Shiloh before Yahuwah, and there Yahusha divided the land until the children of Yasharel according to their divisions. So that second part of the verse, the Septuagint does not have. That Yahusha divided the land into the children of Yasharel according to their divisions. So that's the main difference there. That part of the verse is missing in the LXX. Okay, so. All right. So we're going to move on here. And LXX lacks for verse 11, Mabdara. Mabdara. I've never even heard of Mabdara before, so. Okay, that is interesting. What, is there no verse 11 for the Masoretic text here? This is strange. Okay, never mind. Okay, so let me just make sure that's the right verse here, because it's saying LXX lacks of Mabdora, but I'm not seeing Mabdora came to the children of Yehuda and children of Yosef, Beth Aween. Not seeing Mabdora at all. I think I messed up there. Hold on a second. And a lot of the tribe of Benjamin came forth first according to the families, the borders of their lot, between the children of Yehuda and the children of Yosef. Okay, I don't see Mabdora anywhere. Oh, no, Mabdora is actually in the Septuagint. Okay, so let me fix that real quick. So actually, it should say Masoretic text lacks Mabdora, not Septuagint. My bad, guys. I apologize for that. I prepared this study a whole while long ago, and who knows, I might have been tired one night and messing up a little bit. Okay, so Masoretic text actually lacks Mabdora here. So the Septuagint in verse 12 mentions a place called Mabdora. And just for clarification, I'll show you guys the differences again on the shared screen from my eSword. All right, so if we go to, and then borders were northward, the borders shall go up from Jordan behind Jericho northward and shall go up the mountain westward, and the issue of it shall be Bethan of Mabdora. Now, if we go to the Masoretic, Beth Aven, very weird, which is just Beth Haven. So that's like a completely different place as far as I know, unless that's the Greek version of Beth Haven, which I don't really know. But it seems like Mabdora, that I don't know how you can transliterate Beth Haven into Mabdora in Greek. At the minimum, it seems like something about that location's omitted in the Masoretic there, at the minimum. So Mabdora seems to not be mentioned in the Masoretic of verse 12. Now, we're going to go to verse 13 of chapter 18. There's going to be a lot in chapter 18, guys, so there's going to be a lot. All right, let me see here. So verse 13, Masoretic text lacks lower. So we're just going to go there real quick. The Masoretic text of verse 13 lacks lower. So if we go to the Septuagint here, all right, and the borders will go there to Luz, and behind Luz from the south of it. This is Bethel. And the borders shall go down to Ba'atarab Orek, to the hill country, which is southward of Beth Horon the lower. So it's telling you where South Beth Horon is, or where southward of Beth Horon is. In the Masoretic, it probably just says South Beth Horon. Yeah. South side of Nether Beth Horon. You could say nether means lesser, but I don't know. That's kind of stretching it there. So I think there's a huge difference at the end of verse 13 here when you look at the Septuagint and Masoretic. Anyway. All right, so now we're moving on to chapter 18, verse 14. Masoretic text omits from the mountain, and LXX omits quarter. So both of them are missing something. Masoretic text is missing from the mountain. Septuagint's missing quarter. So I would say the Septuagint seems to be the better version of that verse. Okay, so you got the border was drawn there, encompassed the corner of the sea, southward from the hill that lies before Beth Horon, southward, and the goings out therefore were at Kiriath Baal, which is Kiriath Yearim, a city of the children of Yehuda. This was the west quarter. Mm-hmm. Now, if you go to the Septuagint, it says, and the border shall pass through and proceed to the part that looks toward the sea on the south, and from the mountain in front of Beth Horon southward, and its termination shall be at Kiriath Baal. This is Kiriath Yearim, a city of the children of Yehuda. This is part of the west. So there seems to be a whole big portion at the end that's missing here. Wow. Okay. So we're going to move on here. And let's see here. Okay, so verse 15 of the same chapter, Septuagint has Kiriath Baal. Masoretic text has Kiriath Yearim. Masoretic text omits to the Gazan. Okay, so again, we have the differences in names here, but the biggest difference in verse 15 here is to the Gavin is not mentioned. Oh, no. Yeah, to the Gazan. Okay. To the Gazan. Right there. So the Septuagint would read as, and the south side on the part of Kiriath Baal, and the border shall go across to Gazan, to the fountain of the water of Naphtos. So across to the Gazan seems to not be mentioned. Yep. To the Gazan is not mentioned. So the Septuagint has to the Gazan in verse 15 there. Now we're going to go to verse 16 of chapter 18. LXX has forest. Masoretic text has mountain. That's a subtle difference, not too much. I mean, you can test that out for yourself, but I'm not going to waste going on the shared screen for that. That's just kind of a little different wording. Forest versus mountain. All right, Joshua 18, verse 17. Masoretic text omits fountain of. That's a pretty big difference there. So we're going to look at, so let me just make sure the shared screen's working here. So we're going to look at verse 17 of chapter 18. And was drawn near from the south, was drawn from the north and went forth to En Shemesh and went forth toward Gileoth, which is over against going up of Adumiim, and descended to the stone of Bohan, the son of Reuben. That's interesting. Okay. And then we go to the Septuagint here. It says, and the borders shall go across from the fountain Beth Shemeth. Okay, so shall proceed from Gilead, shall come to the stone of Bayan, sons of Reuben, shall pass over behind Beth Araba, northward, shall go down to the borders behind the sea, northward. Okay, so all right, so the Masoretic text doesn't have found of. Let me just make sure that I'm not messing up with the verse numbers here, because sometimes the Masoretic will have a different verse number. Let me just see here. Yeah. Yeah, so that's completely different, actually. So we're going to move on from that. All right. LXX omits passed along to the side of Beth Oglah. So if we go to verse 19 here, verse 19 says, and the border passed along to the side of Beth Oglah northward, and the outgoing. So this is the Masoretic here. Of the border were at the north bay of the Salt Sea at the south end of the Jordan, or the Yarden. This was the south coast.
Also known as the Dead Sea.
Yeah. And the termination of the border shall be at the creek of the Salt Sea, northward to the side of the Jordan southward. These are their southern borders. So verse 19, pretty much the only thing missing really is passed along to the side of Beth Oglah. So it's like one phrase in the verse, but that could be an important phrase there. So that's very weird that the Septuagint doesn't have that. Okay. LXX for Joshua 18 verse 22. So now we're going to verse 22 here. LXX has Sarah and Basana, and Masoretic text has Zemarim and Bethel. So that's really weird. That's like huge difference in names there. So Beth Abara and Sarah and Besana. And then you got in the Masoretic Beth Harava and Samaraim and Beth El. So definitely differences in names there. Okay. Verse 23. Ephrathah. I find it interesting that the Septuagint in verse 23 has Ephrathah. Masoretic text has Ophrah. Now, for whatever reason, the Masoretes, I guess, didn't want Ephrathah there. I don't know. Could be a messianic reason. I don't know. To speculate, it could be a messianic reason, not for readers to connect, see connections with prophecy, with Ephrathah and all that. I don't know. That's more speculatory. I can't really confirm whether that's true or not. But it's very weird. So as you can see here, and I'll use a modern English version so you can actually read it here. So the ESV using the Masoretic text has Avim, Parah, and Ophrah. The Septuagint of verse 23 has Farah and Ephrathah. Ayin, Farah, and Ephrathah. So Ephrathah is the main difference there. All right, moving on here. We're going to go to verse 24 of the same chapter. The Masoretic text omits Karapha. Karapha. All right, so Karapha. All right, so verse 24 of 18. Septuagint has Karapha, Sephira, Moni, Gaba, 12 cities and their villages. Now, if you go to the Masoretic, there's no Karapha. Very interesting. Okay. So again, we're seeing minor differences right now, but as we go further along, we're going to see very huge ones. Chapter 19, verse 6. The LXX lacks Sharuhen. Sharuhen. I think that's how that's pronounced. Okay, so now we're jumping in chapter 19, verse 6. Beth Laveoth, Sharuhen, 13 cities and their villages in the Masoretic. And the Septuagint just says Betharoth and their fields, 13 cities and their villages. So the Masoretic actually has something that the Septuagint doesn't there. Okay. Now we're going to verse 12 here. Septuagint has Beth Shemesh, and Masoretic text just says towards the sunrise. So basically, I prefer the Septuagint here because Beth Shemesh is actually a transliteration. It's actually giving you the name of the place rather than, oh, where the sun rises. You know, that's kind of vague in my opinion. That's kind of vague. And just to show you I'm not making this up, we'll go to that verse here in verse 12, just to show you I'm not making this up. So this is pretty interesting here. On the border, returned from Zadok in a contrary direction eastward from Beth Shemesh. So it's even telling you it's eastward. It's in the eastward direction. Now, if you go to the Masoretic, like I said before, it's just going to say toward the sun rising. Okay, toward the sun rising. What is the actual location that the sun's rising at? You know. So in my opinion, I like the Septuagint better in that case, and I doubt Yahuwah would want us guessing where that sun was rising in that story. So I mean, that's doesn't seem like something that Yahuwah would leave out. Okay. Anyway, Joshua chapter 19, verse 13. We have LXX saying, Katasem Matharaoza. Masoretic text says, Itakazan and Nea. Okay. So, all right. So here we go. We got, all right. So we are at verse 13, I think here. Yeah. So Katasim Maharazoa. We're going to show that on the shared screen here. Maybe you can wait for my stupid mouse to stop messing up. All right, here we go. Verse 13. So the Masoretic here has on the passes along the east to Geter Sefer to Itah Katsin and goes out to Riman Ham Methor to Nea. Now in the Septuagint, it would say, from there it shall come round in the opposite direction eastward to Geber to the city of Katasem and shall go on to Ramona Matharaoza. Okay. All right. Okay. So here we go here. Now we're going to be going to verse 14 here, which the Septuagint has Amoth and Gaphael. Masoretic text has Hanathan and Yiftahel. Okay. So we'll go back on the shared screen here. Septuagint. The border shall come around northward to Amoth, and they're going out to be at Gaphael. And the Masoretic has it's saying to Kanathan, and the outgoings thereof of the valley of Yiftahel. So very different in the actual names of places there. Okay, so we're going to verse 15 of chapter 19. Okay. LXX has Nabal and Simon and Jericho and Bethen. Masoretic text has Nabal, Simon, and Jericho and Bethman. Okay. And just to show you guys that I'm not embellishing anything, I'll go to the exact verse here. Okay. All right. Septuagint version. Okay. All right. So now we are going to go to verse 17 of the chapter. The Septuagint lacks according to their families in verse 17. So I'll just show you guys that real quick as we're moving on here. Verse 17 of chapter 19. The fourth lot came out to Issachar. The fourth lot came out to Issachar in Masoretic text for the children of Issachar according to their families. So that whole phrase there is missing. in the Septuagint. Okay. All right, moving on. Verse 19. The Septuagint has in Joshua 19:19 Agin, Re-Eroth. Masoretic has Hafarim and Anar Harath. Okay. And Shafaraim and Sion and Anar Harath. That's the Masoretic again. Septuagint has Agin, Siona, and Re-Eroth. Okay. So moving on here. We're going to go to verse 20 now of chapter 19. Septuagint has Anachareth, and Masoretic text has Rabith. Okay. All right. Moving on here. Masoretic text lacks Amarek. Emarek. Okay. That's hard to pronounce there. Okay, so Emmerich. All right, so if we look at verse 21 of this chapter, you have Emmerich as one of the places or one of the allotments not mentioned in the Masoretic text. Okay. All right. So, all right. Verse 24, verse 22 of this same chapter, we're going to look at the LXX has Geth Bor. Okay, Geth Bor. And I'll show you what the Masoretic text has here. Okay, so Septuagint will do first. And the boundary shall border upon Geth Bor. Okay, and no mention of Geth Bor in the Masoretic, so it's actually omitted, it seems like. Okay, moving on here, verse 24. LXX lacks for the tribe of the children. So again, we have omission here, or possibly something that wasn't originally there in the Septuagint here. Oh no, actually, hold on. Let me not for the tribe of the children. Okay, hold on a second. Verse 24. According to their families. Yeah, so the Masoretic text has according to their families. Then if we go to the Septuagint, according to their families. Okay, so that's actually wrong. There's nothing missing there. Okay. All right. My bad. That's my mistake there. So if we look at, oh no, hold on. Yeah, according to their families. So that's pretty strange there. Oh, the children of is missing. It just says Asher instead of the children of Asher. Okay, so that's a very minor difference. That's like a minor wording difference. Obviously, we know Asher, the person's not alive anymore. It's talking about the children of Asher in context. Not a big deal. All right. My bad about that, guys. So it's actually talking about the children of Asher. So let me just fix that little bullet point here. It should say lacks for the children of. So the children of Asher is what's actually missing there. Okay. Moving on here. Verse 25 of chapter 19. Yeah, chapter 19 is going to be a big one. So verse 25 here, we have it saying Exceleketh Aleph Beth Tok Kaf. Masoretic text has Helka Hali Beten Aksaf. Now, for the names of places, I'm not going to be doing the shared screen because we'll never get through this study if I do it every time with the shared screen. So if you really want to test what I'm saying, go ahead and test it for yourselves. You know, there's tons of apps out there where you can do a parallel Bible of Masoretic and Septuagint. So I'm not going to show you every time that there's a difference in the names and stuff like that of places because that would take too long. So anyway. Joshua chapter 19, verse 26. LXX has Amiel and Maasa and Sion and Labanath. Masoretic text is lacking Sion. So this, I think, is important to show that Masoretic text in verse 26 is actually lacking Zion here. So that's a pretty big difference. So yeah, there's no mention of Zion. So that's very strange. Okay, so we're going to move on here. Verse 27. Westward, again, westward and the Masoretic text sun rising. So subtle difference. Subtle difference. The Septuagint is trying to be a little bit more specific there. Okay. All right. And just for the heck of it, I'll show you guys. Do it real quick. Okay. See, Masoretic, sun rising. Septuagint, westward. Okay. So anyway. All right. We are going to go now to verse 30. Masoretic text. Oh, actually, we're going to go to verse 28. My bad about that. Got ahead of myself there. Verse 28. Masoretic text lacks ekgai. Okay. So hold on. Is it ekgai Masoretic text? There's no ekgai there. I think I'm getting the verse numbers messed up here because there's no ekgai is not there in either one. Huh. Elban, Raab, and Mayon, Kathan to the great Sidon. I don't see ekgai anywhere, so I'm just going to leave that alone and probably get rid of that from the document because I can't even find that. So never mind. Never mind. If I find it later, I'll fill it back in with the right cross-reference there. Verse 29. The Masoretic text lacks a poleb. All right, so verse 29. We're going to go a poleb. Yeah, here's one. Yeah, so the Septuagint has mentioning the borders of Ramah and the Tyrians, and the borders shall return to Yazib, and their going forth shall be the sea, and a poleb, and Echozob. Now, the Masoretic is missing that phrase there, or that place there, known as Apoleb. So there's no Apoleb here. Okay. All right. So moving on. Now we're going to go to verse 30. The Masoretic text lacks Arkob. Okay. So Masoretic text lacks Arkob. Just show you that real quick and we'll move on. All right. So the F Sefer, the Masoretic, has Umah also an effect. Oh no, Rakob is there. That's interesting. That's interesting. Oh no, Arkob. Rakob, Arkob. Actually, that might be the same place. It might just be the Greek is Arkob for some reason. Effect Ra'u. Let's see here. Just gonna double check myself here. Affect Reku. No, Arcob's not there. It's actually no, it's not there at all. Yeah, Arcob is not listed in the Masoretic as a place there in verse 30. Now, I have another bullet point in verse 30 saying LXX lacks 22 cities with their villages. Let's see if that's the case. Yeah. This is the inheritance of the children of Asher. 22 cities and with their villages. So yeah, verse 30 is supposed to have, according to the Masoretic, talking about 22 cities and their villages. There's no mention of that in verse 30 or 31 of the Septuagint. So that's a pretty big difference there. The mention of how many villages were allotted to them, that's very weird. I would have to go with the Masoretic on that also. So now we're going to go to verse 32. LXX lacks for the children of Naphtali according to their families. All right, so now we're going to verse 32. The sixth lot came out to Naphtali, but if you look at the Masoretic, it doesn't just say that. It says, even for the children of Naphtali according to their families. So, give or take, that could have been added in by the Masoretes, but I don't see why they would add something like that in. That seems like our modern version, modern copy of the Septuagint had something taken out possibly at some point. So I would expect that was omitted is most likely what happened with that. Verse 33, Septuagint has Molam and Mola and Bezen and Arme and Nabuk and Tamai as far as Dodam. Masoretic text has Helef from Alon to Za'anaim, Adamai, Nekeb, and Yamil unto Lakum. Okay, so those are just different names. Okay, moving on, verse 34. LXX has Yakana. Masoretic text has Hukok, so that seems like two completely different places. Moving on to verse 35 of chapter 19. Okay, so the LXX has Tyrians, Tyre, and Oma Thadaketh. Masoretic text has Zedim, Zer, and Hamath, Ra'akah, and Chinnereth. So, different places. What's interesting about Tyre and the Tyrians is that we get this, basically we get this idea of, the king of Tyre in Ezekiel. So, it's kind of interesting. Later on, Tyre becomes an important place to have mentioned even before Ezekiel. I think it would be important to know that Tyre was already a place before the king of Tyre. So I would definitely agree with the Septuagint on that one in verse 35. 36, Armath, Ariel, and Azor is mentioned in the Septuagint. Masoretic text, Adama, Ramah, and Hazor. Verse 37, LXX says Asari, and Masoretic text says Edri. So, and I mean, if you look at the transliterations here, there's no way they're the same places. I mean, you're talking about a versus a ah. I mean, there's no way that's the same place. A D versus a S. I mean, there's no way that's the same place. Anyway, verse 38 of this chapter. LXX has Thessamis. Masoretic text has Beth Shamish. 19 cities with their villages is lacking in the Septuagint. Now, that's important to show there. That the last part of that verse is not in the Septuagint in verse 38. Okay, so let's go down here. Yeah, 19 cities with their villages in the Sefer of the Masoretic. Then if you go to the Septuagint, it's not mentioned. Very strange, again. What I've also heard too is that the later books of the Septuagint were written later, were finished later, a lot closer to the 1st century BC. So, I don't know if that's a fact, but either way, I think in my opinion, we're dealing with a modern translation issue. The fact that like I said before, the Septuagint became translated into Latin later into the 3rd century AD. The Septuagint was first translated into Latin as the Codex Vaticanus. What we have today is the Codex Vaticanus, not the original Septuagint. So please listen carefully. What we're reading from today, we have no original of. So just remember that too. It's very possible stuff could have been easily replaced, not replaced, or easily omitted, where the negatives we see with the modern copy, a modern day translation of the original Septuagint, or actually, to be more accurate, a modern translation of the Codex Vaticanus is what we have today. So verse 39, LXX lacks according to their families and cities and their villages. So again, we have this same problem here with our modern copy here of the LXX of the Codex Vaticanus. Okay, so it's lacking according to their families and the cities and their villages, which the Masoretic has. If we go to verse 39 here, okay, we go to Sefer of the Masoretic, says this is inheritance of tribe of children of Naphtali according to their family cities and their villages. Okay. Anyway, so we're going to continue on here. I'm trying to go as fast as I can, guys. I'm trying to go as fast as I possibly can with this study, but there's a lot to get through. So,
Sorry,
Verse-
brother, my phone died.
no problem. No problem. All right. So, verse 40, the LXX lacks according to their families again. So, we're seeing the problem with the Latin copy of the original Septuagint is they're lacking certain things. LXX of Joshua 19, verse 41, Sarah, Asa, cities of Samais. Masoretic text has Zorah and Eshtaol and Ir Shemesh. It's kind of interesting, different names. Verse 42, Salatha, Aman, Ayalon, and Yethla. Okay, so that's what the Septuagint has there. Salatha, Ammon, and Ayalon, and Yethla is the Masoretic. Septuagint for verse 44 has Begathon and Gebelon. Masoretic text Begathon and Gebelon. So that's verse 44. That's the differences there versus verse 45 of Joshua 19. Septuagint has Azor. Masoretic text has Yahud. Interesting. Verse 46 of chapter 19. Not the Masoretic. The Septuagint lacks Rakon. Now, whatever Rakon is, let me see what the importance of that would be. Let's see here with the Sefer here. Emehe Yarkon, Rakon, with the border before Yafo. Okay. Okay, so you have Yapa, which is different in the Septuagint, and Herakon. Okay. I mean, Herakon kind of sounds like the other one, but Yapa is definitely different. Anyway, so no Rakon there in the Septuagint. Masoretic text lacks did not drive out the Amorite. Now, this to me is way more important that the Masoretic text is lacking from those previous verses that the Septuagint lacks. I mean, this is a huge paragraph here. So the Septuagint actually has this paragraph in verse 47. And at the end of the study, I'm going to give you guys some history on the two text families of the Masoretic and Septuagint and why we're doing studies like these. So verse 47, this now in the Septuagint, it has this paragraph, and I'll show you the importance of it here. It says, this is the inheritance of the tribe of the children of Dan according to their families. These are families and their villages, and the children of Dan did not. Right here is where it's missing in the Masoretic. And the children of Dan did not drive out the Amorite who afflicted them in the mountain. And the Amorite would not suffer them to come down to the valley, but they forcibly took them the border of their portion. So showing that the allotment Yahuwah gave to the children of Dan was stolen by the Amorite because they didn't utterly destroy the Amorites. Now, for some reason, the Masoretes decided not to put that in the Masoretic text. And right here, even in the Sefer here, you see it. There's nothing mentioned about the allotment of Dan being stolen by the Amorites who were not utterly wiped out. So there's no mention of it there. Okay. Very interesting. And earlier in our study, we saw a similar story where the Septuagint shows a pagan king, a pagan pharaoh that Yahuwah used to utterly wipe out one of the giant tribes that the Masoretic text does not even mention. And if I'm not mistaken, I think what chapter was that, Mom? 16 earlier?
I think so.
That it talks about the pharaoh of Egypt, destroying the Canaanite. So very interesting. So we're going to move on here to Joshua chapter 19, verse 47. Masoretic text lacks, this is an inheritance of the tribe of the children of Dan, according to their families. So basically, all right, yeah, so we already talked about this. That was 47. So now we're going to go. Oh, no. Yeah, I don't know why that's weird. I must have did a typo. Sorry about that, guys. Let me just see here. I think this is a duplicate here. Okay. There we go. Verse 48. And the sons of Dan went. Now the Masoretic text says, and the sons of Dan went and fought against Lachish and took it and smote it with the edge of the sword, and they dwelt in it and called the name of it Lasendan. And the Amorite continued to dwell in Edom and in Salamine, and the hand of Ephraim prevailed against them, and they became tribute to them. So what I'm assuming is that possibly, I guess, the Septuagint in verse 48 doesn't have all that. Or no, hold on a second. Verse 48 says, this is the inheritance of the tribe of the children of Dan, according to their families and their cities and their villages. So actually, yeah. So I'm trying to see where are we missing here? Calling them Lachish after Dan, their ancestor. Okay, so it looks like here. Okay. Let me just see here. I might have got the sons of Dan went and fought against Lachish and took it and smote with the edge of the sword. Continued to dwell in Edom and Salamine. Okay, so let me just see here. Okay, let me see here. I think I might have messed up here. All right. Coast of children of Dan went out too little for them. The children of Dan went out to fight against Lashem. Took it with the edge of the sword and possessed it, and dwelt therein, called Lashem Dan, after the name of Dan, their father. Okay. Inheritance of the tribe of Dan. But they forcibly took them from the border of their portion. Okay, so there's no real difference there. I must have did a typo there. All right, so. All right. Unless I find out the exact verse that difference was, I'm not going to include it anymore because I can't really find it. So anyway, we're going to jump down, I think, to verse 51 now. All right. Let's see. The sons of Dan proceeded to take possession of the land according to their borders. Israel gave them. Okay. All right, here we go. Verse 51. These are the divisions with Eleazar the priest, divided by lot, and Yahusha, the son of Nun, and the heads of the families among the tribes of Yasher, all according to the lots in Shiloh before Yahuwah by the doors of the tabernacle of witness. And they went to take possession of the land. Okay, so we'll see if there's any big differences in the Masoretic of the Sefer here. Tribe of children of Yasher divided for inheritance a lot in Shiloh before Yahuwah at the door of the tabernacle of witness. So they made an end of dividing the country. Seems pretty much the same thing here. Oh, they made an end of dividing the country. Okay, so the Septuagint is missing like a little statement there that they made an end of dividing their inheritances. Okay. All right, so technically that's a point for the Masoretic there. Okay, so Joshua 20 verse 3, Masoretic text lacks even a refuge to the slayer who has smitten a man unintentionally, and the city shall be to you for a refuge, and the slayer shall not be put to death by the avenger of blood until he shall have stood before the congregation for judgment. Okay, so we're at Joshua 20 verse 3. Okay, we're looking at the differences today. Anyone that's just joined us, we're doing something different today because we got a short group today. So short number of people today. We're doing the differences of the book of Joshua from the Masoretic and Septuagint. So we're testing both versions of it. Okay. So even a refuge to the slayer. So as you can see here, the Septuagint has this right here talking about what they were to do for the people seeking refuge that have killed someone by accident, you know, what the Torah talks about. Okay. So now if you go to the Masoretic, it's like completely different. The slayer that kills any person unawares and unwillingly may flee there, but they shall be your refuge from the avenger of blood. So there's like it's almost like half the verse is missing. Even a refuge to the slayer. So like the context of why they're talking about this, like the first part of the verse, in the Masoretic seems to be omitted, is what I'm seeing here. So very interesting there. So Septuagint I would definitely take in Joshua 20 verse 3. That makes a lot more sense. Okay, so anyway, going to verse 4 here. LXX, and Yahusha separated Kadesh in Galilee, in Mount Naphtali, in Shechem, in Mount Ephraim, in the city of Arabuk. This is Hebron in the mountain of Yehuda. So interesting. And let me see here why I mentioned that. It's possible that it's because the Masoretic doesn't have that. Okay, so we got Kadesh mentioned, Galilee, Naphtali, the Mount of Naphtali, Shechem, Mount Ephraim. Okay, so now let's go to the Sefer, the Masoretic. Yeah, so it's completely different. Now, it could be that the ordering of the verses are different, but it's very weird. It's very weird. So, I mean, it keeps talking about the Avenger of Blood, and it's then nowhere is it talking about. Oh, here we go. Okay, so the verse numbers are off. That's my bad. They appointed Eth Kadesh in Galilee and Mount Naphtali and Eth Shechem in Mount Ephraim. Okay, so I'll get rid of that. The Mountain of Judah is there too. Okay, so what happens is, and this happens a lot, guys, is the verse numberings are off. I mean, it's man-made tradition anyway with the verse numbering, so that's my bad on that. So that's my bad on that. So let me just get rid of that bullet point here. Sorry about that. All right, so now I do have a note here for Joshua 20, 5-6. And beyond, so the LXX says, beyond the Jordan, he appointed Bosor in the wilderness. Now, what's interesting, isn't Bosor like near Edom, right?
I think so.
Bosor? Okay, so that's interesting. In the wilderness, in the plain out of the tribe of Reuben, and Aramuth in Gilead out of the tribe of Gad, and Galan in the city of Bashan out of the tribe of Manasseh. These were the cities selected for the sons of Yasharel, for the stranger abiding among them, that everyone who smites a soul unintentionally should flee there, that he should not. So he should not die by the hand of the avenger of blood until he should stand before the congregation for judgment. So we're going to look real quick at verses 5 and 6 of the Masoretic and see if that's missing for some reason. I don't think it is. For the assembly shall be in those days, shall Slayer return to his house and to the city where he fled. Okay. No, so I think I got the verse numberings off is what happened, so that's my bad. So that's not a difference there. Just to note there's not a difference in verses 5-6 are pretty much the same. So we're gonna jump down to chapter 21, verse 8. Sorry about that, guys. So I'm just making some changes to the document to make it more accurate here. Okay. Joshua 21, verse 8, LXX lacks by the hand of. So that's interesting. All right. So now we're getting to 21 of Joshua. Okay. So 21, verse 8. And it says, and the children of Yasharel gave lot unto the Levites, these cities with their suburbs, as Yahuwah commanded by the hand of Moshe. Now, what's interesting is, so the Masoretic text is talking about by the hand of Moshe. Now, if we go, the Septuagint is actually giving a more of like, it's a direct command from Yahuwah, not that is a commandment of Yahuwah by Moses. That's what I find kind of interesting. It's more of like, it's almost like in a way, I'm getting a feeling like the Masoretes like put Moses on a pedestal or something, you know, put Moshe on a pedestal, like, oh, he's this guy, you know, by the hand of Moses. It's kind of, in a way, it's kind of funny. But if you actually look at the Septuagint here, it says that these are Yahuwah's orders, his commandments that he gave to Moses. It's a little different. It's subtly different there. There's a subtle difference there. It's more about Yahuwah being the one that these laws are of, and that Moses is just someone he's given the job to give these laws to. All right, so we're going to go to verse 9 here. LXX lacks mention by name. Okay. So LXX. Now this is verse 9, I believe. All right. So it just says, and they were assigned. So that's such a subtle difference. I mean, to me, that's really not that big of a difference. Not much more importance to have by name there. Okay, so anyway, we're going to move on to verse 14 of this chapter. We're going to go to 21:14. LXX has Alem. Masoretic text has Yatir. Now we're going to go to verse 15 here. Septuagint has Gelah. Masoretic has Halon. We're going to go to verse 16 here. Septuagint has Asa, Tani. Masoretic text has Anin, Yuta. Now we're going to go to verse 17 of 21. Septuagint has Gatheth. Masoretic text has Gibah. Verse 18 of this chapter. Septuagint has Gamala. Masoretic text has Alman. Verse 19 of this chapter. Septuagint lacks with their suburbs. So again, we have that missing again, which we saw earlier a pattern of. Okay, so moving on here, verse 20. Septuagint lacks of their lot out of the tribe of Ephraim. Okay. LXX lacks in verse 22 of this chapter, Kibzaim. Verse 23 of this chapter, Septuagint has Helkothaim. Masoretic text has El Tekeh. Joshua 21:25. Septuagint has Yabatha. Masoretic text has Gethriman. Verse 27 of this chapter. Septuagint has Bosora, which I again mentioned, that's Edom, okay, and its suburbs, 2 cities. Masoretic text has unto the children of Gershom of the family of Levites out of the other half tribe of Manasseh, they gave Golan and Bashan with her suburbs to the city of refuge for the slayer, and Beths-Terah with her suburbs, 2 cities. So that whole paragraph, the Septuagint seems to be missing. Okay. Verse 32, the Septuagint lacks refuge for the manslayer. Okay. Verse 34, Septuagint has Kadesh. Masoretic text has Karta. Okay, so Septuagint in verse 35. Here comes a weird difference here in numbers here. So in the allotments, there's 3 cities in verse 35 for the tribe that's being mentioned. In the Masoretic, it's 4 cities. So very weird there. Now we're going to go to verse 37 of this chapter. Seems like the Masoretic might be missing something here, is what it looks like. Septuagint says, and out of the tribe of Gad, the city of refuge for the slayer, both Ramon, Gilead, and its suburbs, Kamin and its suburbs, Eshban and its suburbs, and Yazir and its suburbs. The cities were 4 in all. So let's see. I'm just going to check myself because I know I'm human. I make mistakes here. So let me just make sure that is a legitimate difference here. Yeah. Kedemoth with her suburbs and Mephah with her suburbs, 4 cities. So there's like half of the verse is missing in the Masoretic. We go to this. Yeah. Oh, no. Actually, no. Where? My verse numberings must be off here or something. Out of the tribe of Gad, a city. Why? Okay, what's going on here? Oh, I see the verse numberings. Okay, out of the tribe of Gad, Ramoth, and Gilead. Okay, my verse numberings. I didn't have it on the right verse. Suburbs. Let's see here. Out of the tribe of Levi. That doesn't look like any difference there. Just want to make sure. Ramoth, Gilead, and suburbs, tribe of Gad, city of the refuge, suburbs. What's weird is that the Septuagint is mentioning the tribe of Levi that were left out of the tribe of Levi. So that seems to be missing in the Masoretic from what I'm seeing here. So there's no mention of the tribe of Levi there. Very weird. So that's interesting. Sons of Merari. Okay. Anyway, moving on. Sorry about that confusion, guys. So let me just fix the verse number here. Sometimes the verse numbers in Septuagint and Masoretic are like one off. So that's why sometimes I'm messing up with my notes here. All right. So going to verse 40 here. Masoretic text lacks in verse 40. And there's suburbs round about these cities, and a city and suburbs round about, and a city, all these cities. Yahusha ceased dividing the land by their borders. The children of Israel gave a portion to Joshua because of the commandment of Yahuwah. They gave him the city which he asked. They gave him Thamnasakar in Mount Ephraim, and Yahusha, Joshua, built the city and dwelt in it. And Yahusha took the knives of stone wherewith he circumcised the children of Israel that were born in the desert by the way, and put them in Thamnasakar. So that's a pretty important piece to be missing, if it's missing here. Yeah, as you can see here, it's in the Septuagint, the Bren's English Septuagint's there. But if you go to the Masoretic, that whole paragraph's missing. So that's a pretty big detail, in my opinion, to not have there. Anyway, so we're moving on here. We're going to verse 43. LXX says they were not failed one of the Tob things which Yahuwah spoke to the children of Yasharal, all came to pass. So it seems like Masoretic is also lacking that in verse 43. Yeah, so they're lacking that also. It just says in the Masoretic of the Sefer, Yahuwah gave unto Yasharal all the land which he swore to give unto their fathers, and they possessed it and dwelled therein. So there's no mention that nothing failed that any of the good things Yahuwah spoke to the children of Israel. So it gives more of a positive in the Septuagint that what Yahuwah is giving them is part of his covenant promise to Abraham. It's more congruent to the story and to Yahuwah's character. If you look at the Septuagint version, it's way more congruent. So moving on anyway. Chapter 22, verse 8. Okay, so 22, verse 8. Now, if we look at the Septuagint, it says, and they departed with much wealth to their houses. They divided the spoil of their enemies with their brothers, very much cattle, silver and gold and iron, and much clothing. Okay, so if you go to the Masoretic here, and he spoke with them, saying, return with much riches unto your tents, and with very much cattle and silver, and with gold and with brass and iron, with very much raiment. Divide the spoil of your enemies with your brothers. Okay. So divide the spoil of your enemies with your brothers. That commandment is actually not even mentioned in the Septuagint. Very interesting. So moving on to verse 13 of this chapter. Okay. All right, so 22 verse 13, Masoretic text lacks the son of Aaron. That's a pretty big thing to lack there. Okay, go to verse 13 here. Yes, son of Eleazar, the son of Aaron, meaning like the Septuagint is letting you know Eleazar is the son of Aaron, which in hindsight, if you know the whole word, it's not a big deal. But if you're a new person reading the Bible, it's like, that's a pretty decent thing to leave out. That Eleazar is the son of Aaron. I mean, that's kind of weird. That's a pretty important detail, in my opinion. So, anyway. Okay. Septuagint lacks following. Septuagint lacks assembly. Okay, verse 16, the Septuagint lacked it following. Verse 18 lacks assembly. Septuagint, okay, it says Alua, even Alua, or Elohim, even Elohim is Yahuwah, and Elohim, even Elohim himself. The Masoretic text says Yahuwah, mighty one of mighty ones. Yahuwah, mighty one of mighty ones. So I kind of prefer the phrase that the Masoretic text uses. It's a little less confusing to a new reader. But anyway, either one I would take. Either way, it's telling you who Yahuwah is either way. Joshua 22:23. Masoretic text lacks Elohim. Now, I definitely need to show this on the shared screen here. So this is something omitted. And it's pretty clear we can say they took it out, the Masoretes, because the Masoretic text was not even created until about 10th century AD. So let's see here. It says, if we have built to ourselves an altar so as to apostatize from Yahuwah, our Elohim, Theos is the Greek equivalent to Elohim. So now if you go to the Sefer here, it just says from following Yahuwah. Very interesting that they left out from following Yahuwah, our mighty one. So that's pretty interesting. Let's see here. Okay. Verse 24, Masoretic text lacks, and Joshua gave a name to the altar of the children of Israel. Or no, my bad, the children of Reuben. So the Masoretic text lacks this. Okay, verse 34 of this chapter. Okay. Gave name to the altar of the children of Reuben, the children of Gad, and the half tribe of Manasseh, and said, it is a testimony in the midst of them that Yahuwah is their Alua, or their Elohim. That's pretty big detail to have missing. Oh, no. Okay, he is Elohim. Okay, so what they left out is that he gave a name to it. Okay, so there's like, my bad. This is not missing. It's actually the middle part. The middle part that talks about he gave a name to it. Okay, gave a name to the altar of the children of Reuben and the children of Gad and the half tribe of Manasseh. Okay, so like it's that little detail in the middle portion that gives more context to that verse that the Masoretic's missing there. Now we're going to chapter 23 now. We only got 2 more chapters to go, and we're done with the study. Okay, Joshua 23, verse 4. LXX has westward, and Masoretic text has going down of the sun. So again, what I like about the Septuagint, this difference, along with the prior difference that's kind of like the same type of difference with Septuagint using westward versus setting of the sun or rising of the sun, is letting you know where geographically this is happening. Okay, or what the context is, where the allotment is. It's westward. So that to me makes a lot more sense than just the going down of the sun or the rising of the sun, because the sun rises and sets at different points of the earth throughout the whole year. So to me, that just, it's very vague the way the Masoretic text has it written, in my opinion. Joshua 23, verse 5, Masoretic text lacks, and he shall send against them the wild beasts until he has utterly destroyed them and their kings from before you. That's a pretty big difference there. That's, that's something relating to Yahuwah's character there, that he's the one doing it. He's the one actually fighting for Israel, right? That's a little weird. That's, I'm not going to lie, that's definitely negative on the part of the Masoretes to take that out. As you see, this Bren's English Septuagint has that whole big extra paragraph here that says, he will send out wild beasts until he has utterly destroyed them, their kings from before you. You shall inherit their land as Yahuwah, our Elohim, said to you. Now, if you go to the Sefer of the Masoretic, there's no mention of that there. So again, we're seeing a common thread of the Masoretes wanting to basically just they want to like make it look like Joshua's doing the fighting, and the Israelites are strong by themselves, that they don't need Yahuwah. It's very weird. In my opinion, it's very weird. It's very self-exaltation in a way I'm seeing by the Masoretes, and a couple of differences here so far. The fact that instead of Yahuwah, it says Joshua, what Joshua did to Ai, we saw earlier in this study. but the Septuagint says Yahuwah, Kurios. So very weird. Anyway, so Joshua 23 verse 6. Septuagint says strive diligently. Masoretic text says very courageous. Now, again, my mom and I, we were talking the other day, it could mean the same thing, but in this context, I think the Septuagint makes more sense with what this is talking about here. I'll first read the Masoretic of the Sefer here. And it says, be ye therefore very courageous and guard to do all that is written in the Sefer, the Torah of Moshe, that you turn not aside from the right hand or to the left. Now, especially with Christians today, I see usually quotes of this verse. It will just have the first phrase, be very courageous, and they'll, somehow spiritualize it. And I see it too in chapter 1 of Joshua, the same verse that talks about that phrase. But if you look at the Septuagint, there's no wiggle room. There's no room for interpretation. Do you therefore strive diligently to observe and do all things written in the book of the law of Moses? You can't even spiritualize that. There's no way to spiritualize that. There's no way. So I like the Septuagint better just because the phrase is strive diligently. You're doing something. You're fighting against your flesh, Okay, so I personally like that better. That's just a personal preference of me. Anyway, what I find interesting, and you can only get this connection really in the Septuagint, is Joshua 23:12 uses the same Greek word mingled in a sexual connotation as Daniel 2:43, two different kinds mingling. Okay, Yahuwah makes everything according to its kind, right? Okay. So I find this very interesting. And especially people that are against the angel interpretation of Genesis 6, they should take a look at this. Okay. For if you shall turn aside and attach yourselves, now this is talking about all the giant nations in context, okay? The Canaanites, Girgashites, Hittites, and all them, right? Or you could even say all the pagans, even unequally yoked. You can add them in too, because by association, the giants were pagans, okay? Okay. For you shall turn aside and attach yourselves to these nations, talking about the ones that are supposed to utterly destroyed, that are left with you, and make marriages with them and become mingled with them and they with you. So I'm hoping Christians are listening here, because I know there's a false interpretation of Daniel 2:43 that they just think it's a mixed Roman Empire that it's talking about. Okay. Notice how that previous verse in Joshua uses that Greek word mingled in a sexual connotation, okay? Just keep that in mind, all right? Now let's go to Daniel 2:43 in the Septuagint that uses that same word, okay? Whereas you saw the iron mixed with earthenware, they shall be mingled with, notice how they are not the seed of mankind. Notice that. Shall be mingled with the seed of mankind. But they shall not cleave together, as iron does not mix itself with clay. Iron and clay are two different materials. They're two different kinds, okay? So the iron cannot be human beings. I'm trying to get this through to my brothers and sisters here. This alone debunks the Sethite theory, okay? This alone debunks it, okay? Because Yahusha said, as the days of Noah, right? Okay, the days of Noah are talking about two different kinds, also mingling, okay? So if you let the text read how it says, okay, daughters were born to them, daughters of mankind, right? These sons of Elohim are not mankind, okay? Especially if you look at the original Greek of the Septuagint, it's Agelo Theos, okay? Not B'nai Elohim, okay? Having seen the daughters of mankind. So the daughters of mankind are separate from the sons of Elohim. And they took themselves wives of all whom they chose. Okay. These sons of Elohim took wives from the daughters of humankind. Okay. That's what's going on in Daniel 2:43 also. Okay. So I just wanted to show that. I know that's kind of off topic a bit, but it's important to show that you can't get the iron being the same type of creature as the clay. Okay, that's not how correct biblical hermeneutics work. Okay, how to interpret scripture. When they're two different kinds, they're two different kinds. Okay, that means they're not the other. Okay, so anyway, Joshua 23 verse 15. Unfortunately here, the LXX lacks Elohim, which I don't like at all. Probably due to the fact that what we have today is known as the Codex Vaticanus and not the original Septuagint that Yahusha and his disciples had. But anyway, just to point out, so see right here at the end here, it has Elohim here in the beginning of the verse, Yahuwah Elohim here, but then it just says which Yahuwah has given you. So the Masoretic either has added or somehow the Codex Vaticanus took it out, Elohim out at the second part of the verse. Because if you go to the Sefer here, it says in verse 15, Yahuwah, your Elohim, has given you. So Elohim is missing in the Septuagint. So anyway. All right, so now we're going to go to verse 16. The LXX actually lacks a pretty huge portion of this. I don't know how this happened. Lacks, when you transgress the covenant of Yahuwah your Elohim, which he commanded you, and go serve other mighty ones and bow down yourselves to them, then will the anger of Yahuwah be kindled against you, and you shall perish quickly from off the Tob land, which he has given unto you. Okay. All right. So let's see here. All right. So okay. So I want to see here. I just want to confirm and make sure this is the case that, yeah. So as you can see here, you got the whole thing here in the Masoretic. And yeah. So even though it's mentioning that it does mention the Septuagint, he has charged us not to do these things, it's not mentioning the repercussion. For some reason, that is omitted in our modern copy of the Septuagint today, which is known as the Latin Codex Vaticanus. Okay, so anyway. Now we're up to the last chapter of Joshua here. So we're up to the end of our study here. Joshua 24 verse 3, Septuagint lacks and gave him Isaac. Now, what's the context here? Let's see if this is warranted to actually need to expound and tell him that he gave him Isaac. Okay. And I took your father Abraham from the other side of the river, and I guided him through all the land, and I multiplied his seed. Oh, no, it's there. It's just in the... Oh, I see what happened. Brenton put it in the next verse. Aha. Well, that's actually reassuring. That's oh, okay. So the Masoretic just felt the need to, I guess, add it to verse 3, like to have it restated. Okay. So I can't say whether that's good or bad or not. The Masoretes probably just felt the need to restate something. I don't know. Or they felt the need to state it before it's being stated in the next verse, I should say. That's very strange. That could be something the Masoretes just added in there, just for whatever extra validation you could say. I don't know. So verse 4 of chapter 24, Masoretic text lacks and became there a great and populous mighty nation. The Egyptians afflicted them. Now, in the defense of the Septuagint, this is something that definitely should be there. Why it's not in the Masoretic, that doesn't make any sense to me. This is actually something that's important. It's talking about that they became a great nation when they went down into Egypt, right? So this is talking about the covenant promise to Abraham. Why this is not there, I don't understand. So, yeah, it just talks about I gave him Isaac and Esau to Jacob. Then I gave him to Esau Mount Seir as a possession, and Jacob and his children went down into Egypt. So the Masoretic text just says they went down into Egypt. But the Septuagint says, and became, so this is missing the Masoretic, they're a great and populous mighty nation, and the Egyptians afflicted them. That's pretty important. That's pretty important to not have there. Okay, so now we're going to go to Joshua 24, verse 5. The Septuagint lacks, I sent Moses and Aaron. And again, the thing is here, though, it could be one of the either conclusion is that they're adding stuff that doesn't need to be restated about sending Aaron and Moses. Like, how many times does Yahuwah mention that in the Torah before the book of Joshua was written? I mean, does that really need to be restated? I don't know. If it was restated, then we have a problem with the modern copy, the copy of a copy of a copy, our modern copy of the Septuagint today, that the Vatican would omit something like that. If not, then it's the Masoretic text just adding something that doesn't need to be restated. That's all I could say. So anyway, but if we go to verse 10 here, Masoretic text lacks deliver them to us. Interesting. Let's look at the context there. Verse 10, the Masoretic text seems to be lacking something. Okay. But Yahuwah, now I'm reading from the Brenton's English Septuagint here, but Yahuwah your Elohim would not destroy you, and he greatly baruched us, baruched us, and rescued us out of their hands and delivered them to us. Now, that's pretty important, because that's showing what Yahuwah did with their enemies. That's pretty important. And that's something huge that the Masoretic text is lacking. Oh. No, so therefore he baruched you still, so I deliver. That's not good. Here we go again with Joshua. So Joshua delivered them, I guess, Mom. The way it's reading, this is making it sound like Joshua delivered them. It's saying the Masoretic, I delivered you out of his hand. But the Septuagint says, Yahuwah your Elohim would not destroy you, and he greatly baruched you and rescued us out of their hands. So there we go again with their putting Joshua on a high pedestal, the Masoretes. The Septuagint's giving Yahuwah credit. It's very weird. I don't know, something to test for yourselves. It's very strange to me. Little idolatry going on, I think. Okay, so Joshua 24:15, Masoretic text, and this is the last one for today's study. Masoretic text lacks, for he is set apart. So Yahusha, Joshua, in the Septuagint version, gives you a reason why he worships Yahuwah and not false gods, which I think is a pretty important thing to have there. So here we go. It says, one of the most famous verses that even Christianity knows about, okay? But if it seems not to you, good to you, to serve Yahuwah, choose to yourselves this day whom you will serve, whether the mighty ones of your fathers that were on the other side of the river, or the mighty ones of the Amorites, among whom you dwell upon their land. But I and my house will serve Yahuwah, for he is set apart. That is what's missing. To me, that's a pretty big statement to be missing. Because it's like Yahusha is trying to get through their thick skulls. Like, listen, Yahuwah is Kadash. These false gods are not. That's what he's really saying. And so it just says, we will serve Yahuwah. I and my house, we will serve Yahuwah. So for he is Kadash, or Kodesh, whatever pronunciation you want to use, is missing in the Masoretic text of Joshua 24:15. So that's the end of today's study. And again, so anyone that wants to test this document for themselves, because I know I got a lot of brothers and sisters that have physical Septuagints along with their King James or whatever Masoretic text Old Testament they might have, feel free to use this. This is shareable for anyone to share. So that's the end of today's study, the differences in the book of Yahusha, Joshua. And this is part 6 of the Adonai Adonis deception. Okay. And I think the Adonai count was what? Let's see. We got about 1, 2, 3, 4 different times in the Masoretic versus the Septuagint in this book. So where the Septuagint has no equivalent for Adonai from what I've seen in the book of Joshua. So anyway, so thank you for joining us. And I pray that this message was a baraka to all of you and that this was edifying to even our brothers and sisters that saw this on Facebook and will later, after the Sabbath is over for us up here on the East Coast, I'll put it up on YouTube. So thank you for joining us. Have a great rest of your day. And to all of our brothers and sisters, enjoy the rest of your Shabbat. Shabbat Shalom. All right.